Good day to everyone tuning in. I am Grant Hogue from Boston Children's Hospital, and this is the Scoliosis Dialogues, the official podcast of the Scoliosis Research Society. We're taking a moment today to spend time with our immediate past president of the SRS, Dr. Laurel Blakemore. Laurel, thank you so much for making time in your busy schedule to record with us today.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Grant.
All right. And so we'll jump right in on this. And I'd like to start with maybe some reflections as you enter this immediate past presidency. We had the annual meeting, which was about a month ago. And so as we reflect back on your time, is there a specific set of goals that you would set out to achieve during your time in the presidential line?
Yes, a lot of the work we did in the past year was, as we were doing it, it felt a little bit like operational work, kind of clarifying processes a little bit in terms of some of the work we do with other societies and in terms of how we are represented, how we represent our positions as a society. But it actually is strategic. It was really, we really emphasized a lot on how we come to collaborations and partnerships with other societies, with our industry partners, and where our positions are in terms of, and how we present our positions in terms of advocacy work. So, as you know, Marinas Clover, who is now past president too, really took a lead in our work with the EU MDR regulatory situation, and that was helpful. I mean, we translated a lot of the work we'd done previously in the US with Pat Cahill and Noel and others on the PEDS device task force. So sort of, but it also made us think in a broader way, like how do we present our position in terms of advocacy? Where is it appropriate for to invest our blood and treasure and time in terms of that work? So that was, advocacy was part of it, I would say. And then the other part was sort of how do we evaluate opportunities for collaboration with other societies so that we better, again, use our blood and sweat and treasure to meet our mission, educational mission, research mission, patient care. So it was actually, was really rewarding. And in the end, it wasn't so operational at all, but it was pretty strategic work.
So you brought up Marinas, who is now our past president. And one of the things that I think is incredibly savvy about the SRS as an organization is that there is a forward-facing president, but there is a diffusion of presidential responsibilities across the presidential line. So could you explain a little bit about how that works, the number of years that someone is in the presidential line, and then how your responsibilities continue now as the immediate past president?
Yeah, I think the SRS is uniquely adept at creating a line of leadership that is continuous, and that continuity carries from the time you realize that you're lucky enough to be elected to the leadership as vice president. You start taking on more responsibility, but it's a tremendous amount of work because we have a lot of calls and everybody's expected to participate. But we also, like, I didn't have any one set of goals that were my goals that were totally different. Like the day one, I just took over and said, okay, whatever Marinas is working on, forget it. I'm going to work on my stuff. It's quite the opposite. It's a very much a continuum of mission. And that's in part created and supported by the fact that the staff is so good at being the institutional memory for us. But also we have that institutional memory as a leadership continuum. So it's really, I think, very effective. And not only is it just a great opportunity, you feel so lucky to work with people like Marinas and Serena and Sukin, but also we don't lose that institutional memory. That mission carries forward into the next year. So, we're going to have to do further strategic work on those collaborations and on advocacy. But also Sukin will be, adding new direction to that. So I think it works really well. And I don't know that every society has the good fortune to have that structure to do that.
And I really like the way you describe that, because what it sounds like to me is that there are organizational goals, and then there is a yearly kind of like reinvigoration with like the next round of new blood coming into the presidential line and new energy coming in to meet those goals in a creative way.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. It's really it leverages everybody's energy and input really effectively.
So, as someone who runs a healthcare group and part of a healthcare organization, you are no stranger to challenges of leadership. So, do you think there's specific challenges that come with leading an international research and education group like the SRS? And how did you or how would future presidents navigate those challenges?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is setting up meetings because as you know, and as Sammy will tell you, I mean, to set up meetings across the timeline spectrum from, from through all the time zones is always challenging. And unfortunately, often somebody ends up meeting at 11 o'clock at night in, Asia, or 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning on the west coast of the States. So that's we are very much accepting of that, and that's why we end up having some meetings on Saturdays and Sundays, because those are really the most effective days to get a big international group together. But much more broadly, and again, sort of strategically, SRS started out as a North American based organization with a specific focus. It's really evolved into very much an international organization, and it is unique in spine societies and in many professional societies in that way. So with that come a lot of different challenges. You can no longer just pay a lot of attention to advocacy in the American regulatory realm, because that doesn't apply to everybody. On the other hand, some of the work that we do in certain areas in North America or in Europe is also applicable to our partners, our members in other regions. And so that sometimes we can help avoid duplication of effort, because what worked and what was important work for, like, for example, the pediatric task force, the US work that we did in the PG device task force has translated and helped us in EU MDR. So it presents both challenges and opportunities, I guess. And that's one of the things I love so much about the SRS, is that we get these relationships and this interconnectedness with providers all over the globe.
It's really interesting because the SRS is an absolutely global organization. So much so, upcoming is the first Asia Pacific meeting in Fukuoka. And can you talk a little bit more about the importance of these international collaborations, even for you personally, and how they've affected your practice by using the SRS as a literal and figurative meeting space for some of the brightest minds in spine care?
Oh my gosh, I mean, to learn from again, when we're first starting out, we have a little bit of a local view, I think, of our profession and of the work we do. And then the first time you go and see what is being done in other centers and in other regions and other parts of the world, it's just so eye-opening to see, like, how much more there is to learn, and for us to learn. It's really, and that's part of what is exciting about our profession, right? You're always like realizing how little you really understand of the big picture of your field, of the care we give patients, and how much farther we have to go. So I really love that about what we do. And I guess that the I think the international education part of SRS is you can't be understated. I mean, we conduct courses. We've always conducted courses in other parts of the world. Like we have the hands-on course in Nijmegen. We have the hands-on course in Hong Kong. And with this new course, which we're really excited about, the Asia Pacific course, it's also a response to our members' changing environments. It's much harder for members from some regions to travel to the SRS. It's harder to get away from work. It's harder to get funding to attend the meeting. So we're trying to meet our mission, which is to improve global care for patients with spine conditions and complex spine and spine deformity, and meet the needs of our members in these regions and reach out to new members in these regions so that we can expand our educational mission. So this is a little bit of a pilot project. If it's not SRS Light, it's different. It's as we coined the term by the region for the region. So as we see how this works for the needs of the region and make sure it's something that's reproducible for SRS, then we may be able to use this in other regions, but we're going to see and learn from this and try to learn fast. If it's not successful in meeting their needs and our needs, then we'll fail fast. But we want to make sure that it's a unique experience, not just like a little baby version of SRS.
Absolutely. So at its core, regardless of how small or how large the SRS is, it is a research society. And so, is there an area of scoliosis and spine deformity research right now that you are most excited about? The thing that we're just now starting to understand that's going to change our lives in 5 years.
I think for me, the most exciting thing is the thing I probably have the least, I'm the least qualified in terms of my expertise, which is how we can utilize AI to look at database, data that's housed in databases and effectively use it to predict outcomes. I mean, the questions we can't answer still, which is, it's sort of amazing. I mean, besides the fact that we can't exactly tell a patient with idiopathic scoliosis what causes it, that's a bummer, but we're working on it. But also, like, if in your practice and my practice in pediatrics, if a 10-year-old comes in with a 20-degree curve or 15-degree curve, not all of them are going to get worse, but some of them are. And we would love to be able to predict better which ones are going to benefit from treatment. And similarly, in an adult practice, a patient who, for example, enters adulthood with an idiopathic curve of 30 degrees, which one of those patients are going to get worse or benefit from treatment early on, and what's the best treatment for them? I mean, those are the kind of questions we really want to be able to answer for our patients. And I think we're on the brink of being able to understand what databases can effectively help us do that, and what AI tools can answer those questions. AI isn't the answer, right? We use the AI and to answer those questions. So I'm not even nearly smart enough to answer those questions, but I'm smart enough to know that there are people out there who can help us answer those questions. And so that's one of the things we're going to be working on.
Me is smart enough to agree with you. Because I think, the transition from large language models and how we use them in medical care to truly agentic AI is going to be quite incredible. And we've started to see that just a little bit in the immunology space. And it's led to many breakthroughs. And I'm hoping for the same for us.
Me too.
And so as we transition a little bit into your personal journey, we've actually done an earlier podcast last year for Scoliosis Awareness Month where we went through a lot of your educational and career history. So I won't make you go through all of that again, but within this organization, leadership and service really tend to be the same thing. The people who are serving tend to be the leaders, and the leaders typically are the ones who are serving. And so, is there a specific person that really inspired you to serve at this high level?
I was fortunate enough to see a bunch of people who I wanted to emulate in terms of their international or their societal participation. And I think we can probably all point to people like that. And I certainly don't want to go through all my background, but I mean, for me, Bob Hensinger, we called him a triple threat, right? He'd been president of the Academy, president of POSNA, president of SRS. He was, I mean, service in terms of education and research was like his middle name. And he was my mentor and my chair when I was in resident, and then my chairman when I came back as a partner to Michigan. So I was super fortunate to learn that from him. And it just, I mean, I guess I would have to say my father, in full disclosure, was an academic surgeon. So, and so I really, I think I grew up just assuming that if you were going to be a physician and really wanted to make a difference, you were going to participate in societies, because that's how you could really have a larger impact, a broader impact. I maybe wasn't as effective on a very local level or hyper local level, but I really wanted to invest energy in time and societal work, and I obviously got back in spades in terms of how rewarding that was for me. So yeah, Bob Hensinger and Fran Farley at Michigan were really important to me. I trained with George Thompson, who had been president. George was president for 2 years. And so, I had a lot of good examples of leaders who, I could see what they got out of it, and I could see what they gave to the societies. And so that was where I invested most of my effort, and less less so, maybe less effectively on a local hospital leadership level, just because initially I just didn't have that experience, I guess, as part of my repertoire.
So you went into the family business of
Yeah,
service through societies.
yeah, yeah. Half of my brothers and sisters, half of us went into medicine, half of us went into anything but, yeah.
And so last year, when I did a similar interview with Marinus, we talked a little bit about the balancing act and everything that went into creating structure around his life, to have not just a successful presidency, but a very positive presidency. And so, how do you balance your role as a surgeon, researcher, leader of a society, and still make everything work and still be present for family and friends, or even have your own hobbies?
I mean, you know, it is a balancing act, right? I have sort of buckets of energy where I can invest energy in my life that would, you know, that's societal work and my job here at PSV as CEO, and my clinical job, and then my personal life and sport. So I did I did let things get a little out. If I try to keep them all hanging at the same level where they're of success, I guess, in each area, I definitely got a little out of balance towards the end of the year where I just didn't have very much time for my personal or sport life, which was fine. I mean, I was sort of accepted that as known, a known outcome of this investment, but I couldn't let the clinical side or the CEO, you know, the leadership side here really fall apart. I mean, there were times when I was late on answering emails about stuff that was happening here, but you know, like all of us, you have to sort through and figure out what you have to answer, what you can put aside for later, and hope that it doesn't accidentally become unbolded in your inbox, because that's the kiss of death for me. If it's not bold anymore, I'm not going to find it again. Hope that if I accidentally unbold it, somebody's going to call and say, why haven't you answered? And it'll resurface it. But so I don't know that I'm certain that I do not have the best way of organizing that, but I tried to keep those things balanced and had, you know, support from my husband. I said, look, this is going to get a little hairy from time to time, and luckily he was really supportive. And I think we all have that same need for support in our personal lives, that, you know, things are going to get out of whack from time to time. As long as you're continuing to make the effort to come back and try to get them balanced again. I think it pretty much works. I didn't get fired from my CEO job, so that was good.
There you go. There you go. I mean, but it takes a lot, right? It takes a village to build an SRS presidency.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah,
lot. In the meantime, you're juggling, right? There's so many balls in the air, and in real time, you're trying to figure out which of these balls are glass and which are plastic.
exactly. Yeah, and my team here, you know, you're just, I mean, like Marinus, his surgical team really, he said, like, he really supported them. They all came, like, they came to the meeting because he said at the outset, you know, I'm gonna have to call on you to support me because I'm going to be traveling more than usual. And I did the same thing. I mean, I stopped taking trauma call during the year, like after Christmas. I just said, I'm not gonna make it if I try to do this. So my team stepped up and understood that. And it was about time for me anyway, but in terms of taking primary ortho call, but you have to ask something of your team, I think, to when you're really going to commit to a big leadership role like this. And so, you know, I was fortunate enough to have really good support here at home, and I think most of us have had the same experience. I'm sure Sukin is going through the same thing this year. So
Well, so that leads directly in to the next thing that I would ask. So, what is the piece of advice that you would give to Sukin as he's now a month into his presidency?
well, Marina's told me to make sure I enjoy it. And I think that was a really important lesson. I think I would tell Sukin the same thing. It's really it's gonna be like any amazing experience that you feel so lucky to have had, it's gonna be gone. That's gonna happen and that's gonna be gone. Like whatever big event happens in your life, this is a huge event in my professional life. I mean, if you get married or you win an award, I mean, it feels like it should last for a long time, but it's done and gone, and then you're going to be on to the next thing to some extent. So you have to it's really important to be in the moment as much as you can during the year for these experiences, because it's overall a great experience. I mean, it's just a great group of people to work with. And I feel so lucky to have had that opportunity. So I think even when it got hard in terms of balancing all those buckets, you can't let it stress you out too much to the point where you're not enjoying it anymore, because it's really a once in a lifetime experience, at least for me.
Fantastic. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I want to thank you so much for coming on to the Scoliosis Dialogues, for talking to us a little bit about your year is the SRS president, and also coming years of service on the presidential line. Are there any final thoughts that you would like to share with the membership at large?
I just want to thank you and the podcast committee and social media and communications council for doing, I think you guys have done a great job. You in particular have done a really amazing job with these podcasts. So I've listened to almost all of them, and they're really fun to listen to. And so I want to thank you guys for dragging the SRS into the 21st century so effectively in terms of our social media presence and how we communicate with the generation that's younger than some of us. I think it's really great. And I think we learn a lot. I mean, even old dogs can learn new tricks, and we've learned a tremendous amount from how we can effectively communicate both to our members and to not potential members and to patients through some of these efforts. So I want to thank you guys for doing such a great job.
Thank you. And we continue to serve, and we appreciate the role model that you've been for all of us.
Thanks.